Welcome back to the Deep Dive. Great to have you tuning in. Today, we're doing exactly what the show's about, a real deep dive into a specific source, and this time it's Brian Tracy's book, No Excuses, The Power of Self-Discipline. It's a book that, well, it seems to hit home for a lot of people looking at personal development. Our goal here is to really pull out the core stuff, the main ideas, the insights, the stories he tells, and maybe most importantly, the action steps Brian Tracy lays out. We want to give you a clear picture, in a conversational way, of how he argues self-discipline is maybe the master key to hitting your goals and building the life you want, kind of like a shortcut to the heart of the book without it feeling like a lecture.
Yeah, and it's a topic that just feels so fundamental, doesn't it? What's really interesting about No Excuses is how Brian Tracy frames self-discipline. It's not some niche skill just for CEOs or athletes. He basically says it's this foundational quality. It supports success, happiness, well, pretty much everywhere. Personal life, work, money, even just feeling good about yourself, he positions it as the essential skill.
Absolutely. Okay, so let's jump right in. What's the core argument of No Excuses? What's the big takeaway Brian Tracy wants us to get?
Well, at its heart, Brian Tracy's argument in No Excuses is pretty direct, maybe even blunt. He basically says the main reason people don't reach their potential, the reason for frustration, not achieving enough, feeling unhappy, it's usually not because they lack talent or smarts or education. It's not even always about lack of opportunity. He puts it squarely on a lack of self-discipline. And right alongside that, this tendency we have to make excuses for ourselves.
Okay, so it's less about the outside world and more about what's going on inside, our own follow-through.
Exactly. Brian Tracy calls self-discipline the master key, the one quality that unlocks all the other doors to, as he puts it, personal greatness. He argues it's the fundamental thing that makes everything else possible. So, you could have a great background, top education, lots of chances, high IQ. But without self-discipline, he thinks you'll probably struggle to consistently apply yourself and might just stay, well, average. But with it, even if you start with less, you can achieve some really remarkable things.
Wow, okay. So not just important, but the most critical ingredient in his view.
That's the way he presents it. And the book itself, No Excuses, is structured to hammer this home. He looks at how this principle works across 21 different areas of life. He breaks it down into 3 parts in the book. Part 1 is about personal success and personal power. Part 2 gets into business, sales, finance, that side of things. And Part 3 covers personal life, happiness, health, relationships. But the common thread, the message in every chapter, is that self-discipline is the crucial element. And the payoff he describes for cultivating this is pretty big. More self-esteem, more self-respect, personal pride, a better self-image, feeling happier, more powerful, and ultimately becoming, in his words, unstoppable.
Okay, let's really unpack that core idea then. Self-discipline. What exactly does Brian Tracy mean by it in No Excuses? He offers a specific definition, doesn't he?
He does, and he really stresses this definition. He says it's key to understanding the whole book. Brian Tracy credits it to a guy named Albert Hubbard, but he heard it from Cop Gottmeyer, who is apparently a legend in the success field. And the definition is, self-discipline is the ability to do what you should do, when you should do it, whether you feel like it or not.
Whether you feel like it or not, that phrase really stands out.
It's absolutely crucial because it points directly to the struggle, right? The internal battle against our moods, our feelings, our desire for comfort right now. It's about acting based on what you know is needed for your long-term goals, not what your temporary feelings are dictating. You might not feel like getting up early to exercise or making that sales call you're dreading or tackling that big complex project. But self-discipline is having the ability, the strength to do it anyway.
So it's about putting action and what's necessary ahead of immediate feelings or comfort.
That's it, exactly. And Brian Tracy shares this really compelling story about Cop Gottmeyer, the guy who gave him the definition. It really highlights why it's so central. He describes meeting Gottmeyer, who'd apparently spent something like 50 years researching success principles, had a list of over 1,000 of them. So Tracy asks him, okay, out of all those 1,000 principles, which one is the absolute most important? And Gottmeyer, supposedly without even hesitating, pointed right to that definition of self-discipline. He told Tracy, essentially, that without self-discipline, none of the other 999 principles work. They just don't stick. But with self-discipline, all the others become effective. They suddenly work. So that positions self-discipline not just as important, but as the absolute foundation, the prerequisite for making anything else happen.
Wow. Okay, if it's that fundamental, if it boils down to just doing what you should, whether you feel like it or not, then here's the big question, right? Why is it so damn hard? Why do so many of us struggle with it? Why don't we just do the things we know are good for us?
Yeah, Yeah, and that leads Brian Tracy to talk about what he sees as the two biggest internal roadblocks, the enemies within, so to speak. And he's very clear, it's usually not about external things holding us back, it's internal. The two biggest culprits, he says, are the path of least resistance.
Which makes sense. We all tend towards easy.
Right. And the second one is what he calls the expediency factor.
Expediency factor. What's that exactly?
It's that powerful temptation to do what's fun, easy, and often, frankly, unimportant right now, instead of tackling what's hard, necessary, and actually life-enhancing in the long run. It's the pull of immediate gratification. It's why we might, lose hours scrolling social media instead of writing that report, or binge watch a show instead of going to the gym, or constantly check email instead of focusing on that really high-value, difficult task. These two forces, seeking ease and seeking immediate payoff, are constantly working to pull us away from the effort that creates real lasting progress. And it really makes you ask, doesn't it? If our default is towards easy, how do we fight that? How do we consciously choose the harder path that actually leads somewhere better?
And Brian Tracy also brings fear into this picture, right? As another major thing getting in the way of that disciplined action.
Oh, absolutely. Fear is huge. It can be paralyzing, stopping us from doing what we know we should. And no excuses. He talks about some really common ones. The fear of failure, obviously. Fear of poverty or losing money that can freeze people, make them avoid any risk, any opportunity. Then there are the social fears. Fear of rejection, you see that a lot in sales. He calls it call reluctance. The fear of public speaking, which is massive for so many people. Fear of embarrassment, looking stupid, losing respect. All these fears whisper, I can't, or what if? And they feed right into that lack of action.
But he makes a key point about courage, doesn't he? It's not about not feeling the fear.
Exactly, that's critical. Courage, for Brian Tracy, isn't the absence of fear. It's feeling the fear, acknowledging it, and then disciplining yourself to act anyway, despite the fear. He argues the only way to actually conquer a fear is to face it head on through disciplined action. Do the thing you're afraid of. And he uses a really great story to illustrate this, about confronting a bully. It's framed around a workplace scenario, but it applies anywhere.
Right. The story about the woman whose boss was constantly critical, that one really resonated.
It's a perfect example. Brian Tracy tells about advising this woman who was just miserable because her boss was constantly putting her down, criticizing everything. He told her, look, bullies often deep down are cowards, and they tend to back off when someone stands up to them firmly. So he gave her very specific words to use. He said, next time he starts in on you unfairly, turn, look him right in the eye, and say clearly, I would appreciate it if you would not talk to me like that ever again. It hurts my feelings and stops me from doing my job the way you want it done.
Wow, saying that to your boss takes some serious guts, real discipline.
It really does. And she apparently mustered that courage. She was fed up. So the next time the boss started his usual routine, she did exactly what Tracy suggested. Squared her shoulders, looked him in the eye, delivered the lines, and she wrote back to Tracy later describing what happened. Just like he predicted. The boss just stopped, looked totally stunned, mumbled something, and basically retreated to his office. He actually apologized later. And importantly, he never criticized her that way again. And the woman realized, kind of sadly, that she could have stopped months, maybe years, of feeling bad much earlier if she just had the courage and the discipline to confront him the first time. And what's really interesting is how Tracy talks about fears being interconnected, almost like they're bundled together in our minds. On the same circuit, you could say. He specifically mentions that the fear of rejection, like in sales, often seems linked to the fear of public speaking. He suggests that if you take disciplined action to overcome one, say, you join Toastmasters to work on public speaking.
Right, force yourself to do it.
Exactly. You discipline yourself to face that fear. Often, he says, you'll find your fear of rejection also shrinks, sometimes dramatically. Your overall confidence in all kinds of interactions goes up. It's like tackling one breaks the power of the others on that same circuit. Which makes you wonder, doesn't it? Where else in your life could facing one fear actually help reduce others you maybe didn't even think were connected?
That's a really cool idea, the ripple effect of facing one fear. So disciplined action builds courage, builds confidence. It's not just about getting tasks done.
Precisely. And while that default failure mechanism, the pull towards ease and expediency is always running, Brian Tracy says the success mechanism inside us gets switched on powerfully by having a clear goal.
So a goal acts like the trigger.
Yeah, kind of like an override switch for that tendency towards just coasting or avoiding effort.
Yeah.
Setting a clear goal gives you direction, a purpose. It's like taking a ship that's just drifting and giving it a rudder and a compass. Suddenly it's heading somewhere specific. Tracy references Aristotle here, the idea that humans are teleological organisms, meaning we're naturally purpose-driven. We feel happiest, most alive, most in control when we're actively moving towards a clear, meaningful goal every day. So the ability to set goals and then pursue them relentlessly, that's one of the absolute most vital disciplines, according to No Excuses.
He uses that analogy of the bird to illustrate this, right?
Yeah, the homing pigeon is like a great visual for this internal guidance system that a goal activates. Now, you can take a homing pigeon, put it in a cage, cover the cage, put it in a box, put the box in a truck, drive 1,000 miles away, any direction, over mountains, whatever. When you finally stop and open that box, the pigeon takes a moment, gets its bearings, and then just knows how to fly back home.
Hmm.
Tracy uses that to say, when you have a clear, definite purpose, a goal, you activate a similar internal system that guides you towards it, helps you overcome obstacles, find the way, just like that pigeon.
Okay, so setting the goal is the crucial first step to activating that success mechanism. But how do we actually do it effectively? Brian Tracy gives a specific exercise in the book, doesn't he? Not just set goals.
Oh yeah, he provides a very concrete method, a core discipline he calls the 10-goal exercise. Takes just a few minutes but requires focus. You get a clean sheet of paper, write goals, and today's date at the top. Then you discipline yourself, that's the key word, to quickly write down 10 goals you want to achieve in the next 12 months. Can be anything. Financial, family, fitness, career, possessions, whatever matters to you. The trick is to do it fast, like 3 to 5 minutes. Don't overthink how you'll achieve them yet, just get them down.
Like a brain dump of your desires for the next year.
Exactly, just get them out of your head and onto paper. Then, once you have your list of 10, you pause. Tracy asks you to imagine you could achieve all of them if you really wanted to. Then, for the exercise, imagine you have a magic wand. You can wave it and achieve any one goal on that list instantly, within 24 hours. You look at your list again and ask yourself this question: which one goal, if I achieved it right now, would have the single biggest positive impact on my life? Which goal would help me achieve more of the other goals on my list?
Finding the linchpin goal, the one with the most leverage.
That's the idea. Find that one goal, whatever it is, you circle it. Brian Tracy calls this your major definite purpose, at least for now. Then you grab another clean sheet of paper, write that circled goal at the top. Make sure it's clear, specific, measurable. Give it a deadline, and then comes the next crucial step. You brainstorm and list everything you can possibly think of that you could do to achieve that one circled goal, every single action step.
So list 10, pick one, then list actions for that one.
Yes. And once you have that action list, you organize it. What comes first? What's most important? Sequence and priority. Then the final, maybe most critical discipline. You pick the single most important or logical next step on your action plan, and you take action on it immediately. Do something, anything, right away to get started. And crucially, you make a solid resolution. You will work on this specific, major goal every single day, in some way, until it's achieved. You decide that for this one goal, failure is just not an option. And Tracy really emphasizes that this whole process, especially writing and rewriting goals, and that daily action on the main one, it's like programming your subconscious mind. It keeps the goal top of mind, so you start noticing opportunities related to it everywhere. This daily discipline sharpens your focus, builds your determination, and he claims it can dramatically speed up your progress towards what you really want.
That makes sense. It builds momentum, keeps that internal homing pigeon locked on target. Okay, before we shift gears, there's one more foundational discipline Brian Tracy hits hard in No Excuses. Accepting responsibility. That seems huge for him.
It's absolutely fundamental in his framework. He argues that a major reason people get stuck in negative emotions, anger, resentment, feeling like a victim, is an unwillingness to accept full, 100% responsibility. He often traces this back to childhood, maybe experiences with harsh criticism or punishment that created deep feelings of guilt, feeling unworthy, that I'm not good enough, belief. He calls it the fatal fallacy, this subconscious idea that if someone else is doing better, it must mean I'm inherently worse. That feeling of inadequacy, he says, is behind a lot of adult struggles and often leads to blaming others or making excuses.
So how does he suggest we break out of that cycle? That victim mentality. The core discipline is a conscious choice, a powerful decision. Brian Tracy urges you, starting right now, to resolve to accept 100% responsibility for everything you are, everything you have, everything you become. No exceptions. He gives a simple, direct mantra: never complain, never explain. It means consciously refusing to blame other people, circumstances, the past, anything outside yourself or where you are right now. No excuses.
And what Tracy claims is really fascinating is the immediate psychological effect of doing that sincerely. He says it's basically impossible to accept full responsibility for something and simultaneously feel angry or negative about it. The very act of saying, okay, I am responsible here, just changes your internal state instantly. It brings calmness, clarity, a more positive focus on solutions instead of blame. It shifts you from being what he calls a mental child, seeing yourself as a victim, to being a mental adult, recognizing you're in charge of your responses, your life. He uses the example of Alcoholics Anonymous. No real progress happens until the person accepts 100% responsibility for their problem. Once they do, recovery becomes possible. And he applies this directly to money too, very bluntly. Tracy says you are 100% responsible for your financial situation, period. Blaming the economy, your boss, your parents, whatever, for being in debt or not earning enough. That keeps you an economic child in his view. Accepting responsibility for your income, your spending, your debts, your investments, that's the step that makes you an economic adult. He sees a direct link.
The more responsibility you accept in any area, the more personal control and power you feel in that area. And the antidote to feeling angry or worried or negative, he says it's always purposeful action, taking a step, any step, towards your goals. He even includes specific exercises and no excuses for this, like actively thinking about a past negative event and finding ways you were partly responsible, or choosing someone you're still angry with and deciding to forgive them completely, not for them, but for your own freedom.
Okay, let's take those foundational ideas, discipline, goals, responsibility, and see how Brian Tracy applies them specifically to work and money. He talks a lot about good old-fashioned hard work, doesn't he?
He really does. And he's not shy about it. Tracy argues that things like intelligence and education are great, but consistent, disciplined hard work, that's the non-negotiable ingredient for any kind of lasting success, especially making money. He backed this up, points out that most big fortunes today are first generation. People like Bill Gates, Warren Buffett, Sam Walton, they started with very little and built their wealth through sheer effort.
So earned wealth, not just inherited.
Exactly. And he often cites that study from The Millionaire Next Door. They interviewed hundreds of self-made millionaires, and something like 85% of them said their success wasn't because they were smarter or better educated. It was because they were willing to work harder than pretty much anyone else they knew.
That's a really striking statistic. Makes success seem less about innate genius and more about consistent effort.
It really does. And Tracy stresses, it's not just about logging hours. It has to be disciplined work. It means fighting that natural urge to cut corners, take the easy route when things get tough. Real, lasting success, he argues, comes from disciplining yourself to work hard, consistently, for a long, long time. Years, not just weeks or months. That sustained effort is what builds something significant. But it's not just working hard, it's working smart. And that, according to Tracy, requires the discipline of setting priorities. He mentions a survey of executives asked what gets people promoted. The top two qualities, by a huge margin, 85% agreement, were 1, the ability to set priorities and focus on high-value work, and 2, the discipline to get that important work done quickly and well. Those two disciplines were seen as even more critical than technical skills sometimes.
Sounds like the 80-20 rule, the Pareto principle, right?
Absolutely. Tracy applies it directly to work. Says about 80% of the real value you create probably comes from just 20% of your activities. So disciplined, focused work on those few, critical, high-value tasks. That's the key to getting more done, getting noticed, getting paid more, getting promoted faster. He offers a simple exercise for this called the Law of Three to help you focus and potentially double your output.
The law of three, how does that work?
It's pretty simple but needs discipline, Tracy says. Identify the 3 most important things you do in your job, the 3 activities that contribute the absolute most value to your company or your role. He suggests for most people, these 3 things account for maybe 90% of their real contribution. The discipline, then, is to consciously structure your time, your day, your week, around focusing intensely on those 3 things. He quotes Benjamin Trigo, "The very worst use of time is to do very well what need not be done at all." End quote. Tracy points out that working really hard on unimportant stuff, even if you're efficient at it, is a total career killer because it steals time from the few things that actually matter.
So it's not just being busy, it's being disciplined about what you're busy with, focusing on the tasks that make you valuable, the ones your boss really cares about.
Exactly. It takes discipline to resist clearing all the easy little things off your list just to feel productive, and instead tackle the big, important, maybe harder tasks first.
And Brian Tracy really singles out sales as an area where this kind of focus and discipline is just critical, right? Especially for business owners or salespeople. Yeah, he quotes Red Motley's famous line, "Nothing happens until a sale takes place." Sales are the engine, Tracy stresses, essential for survival, essential for growth. He tells the story in No Excuses about a time and motion study that's really eye-opening. Researchers talked to hundreds of executives and business owners. Every single one said sales and marketing were absolutely the most vital activities for their business.
Okay, makes sense.
But then, the researchers actually followed these same people around for a month, tracking how they really spent their time. The results were kind of shocking. The average person who said sales were vital, they were spending only about 11% of their time on actual sales and marketing activities.
It's 11%. Wow. Where was the rest going? Meetings, paperwork, admin, discussions, long lunches, you name it. It showed this huge gap between knowing what's important and having the discipline to actually do it. Tracy argues that generating sales needs intense focus, concentration, pretty much every hour of the business day. He brings up the 80-20 rule in sales. Again, top 20% earn 80% of the money, and talks about his own decision early on to discipline himself to get into that top 20%. He also notes it's even harder for outside salespeople. They need more discipline because they work alone, like guerrilla fighters, he says. Constant temptation to slack off. His advice: act like your boss is watching you all the time. Use discipline tactics like clustering calls geographically to maximize face-to-face time, not using driving as an excuse to avoid selling. And this focus on disciplined action ties right into financial discipline, another area where Tracy says lack of self-control is the root cause of most problems. He's very clear: no excuses. Financial trouble usually comes down to a lack of self-discipline, specifically the inability to delay gratification. Spending everything you make, often more, going into debt. He points back to The Millionaire Next Door, showing how two families with the same income can end up worlds apart financially by middle age, one independent, one drowning in debt, purely because of different levels of discipline around saving and spending. He even suggests this starts young, like getting pocket money and immediately thinking candy. That immediate gratification pattern can stick for life if you're not disciplined about changing it.
Okay, so if immediate gratification is the trap, what's the disciplined way out? What's the concrete plan Tracy offers in the book for financial freedom? He lays out a very specific, step-by-step savings plan. It takes real discipline, especially at first, but he promises huge long-term benefits. Step 1, he says, requires the most discipline. Decide today to save just 1% of your income each month, starting with the very next paycheck. And discipline yourself to live on the other 99%. Treat that 1% savings like a bill you have to pay to yourself right at the start of the month, before anything else.
Only 1%. Seems quite small. It is, and that's intentional. Tracy uses the journey of 1,000 leagues begins with a single-step idea. The discipline is just starting, making it manageable. Once you've done that 1% consistently for a few months, gotten used to living on 99%, then you bump it up. Increase it to 2% savings per month. After a few more months, discipline saving at 2%, you go to 3%. And you keep doing that, increasing by 1% every few months, until you eventually reach the point where you're comfortably, consistently saving 10% of your income every single month.
And what's the payoff for sticking with that beyond just having savings?
Tracy says the payoff is huge, and it's more than just the money. As you save consistently, even small amounts, your debts naturally start going down. Why? Because you become way more conscious of where your money's going, more thoughtful about spending, fewer impulse buys. But the bigger reward, he argues, is psychological. Remember, happiness is progress towards a goal. Every time you save $1 or pay off $1 of debt, you feel good, you feel in control. Your brain releases endorphins. You feel calmer, more positive. He suggests that within about 2 years of disciplined saving this way, most people can be out of consumer debt and building a real savings or investment cushion. As that grows, you feel more secure, you actually start attracting more opportunities, more money seems to flow your way, and your whole relationship with money changes. You become naturally more disciplined. It takes serious discipline up front, he admits, but the reward, financial freedom, peace of mind, that sense of control is massive. It's about reshaping your whole financial personality. Okay, moving beyond just work and money, Brian Tracy also puts a huge emphasis in no excuses, on self-discipline for our personal growth, starting with learning. He has a really interesting take on our most valuable asset.
Right, it's not our stuff, it's something else.
Exactly. Tracy argues your single most precious financial asset isn't your house, your car, your bank account. It's your earning ability, your capacity to generate income. And what's unique about this asset, he says, is that it either goes up in value, appreciates, or goes down, depreciates, based entirely on whether you consistently invest in improving it.
Like a muscle, use it or lose it.
That's the exact analogy he uses. Your earning ability strengthens with regular exercise, which means continuous learning, getting new knowledge, upgrading your skills. But if you neglect it, stop learning, stop challenging yourself, that muscle gets weak. Your earning ability can flatline or even decline.
Excellence in any field, he argues, doesn't just happen. It requires a conscious decision, a commitment to lifelong learning. Especially now, knowledge and skill are everything. Mental fitness needs constant disciplined work, just like physical fitness. You can't afford to stop if you want to stay relevant and successful. He uses quotes to drive this home, like Lincoln saying, "The fact that some have become wealthy is proof that others may do it as well if you learn how," or Bertrand Russell. The best proof something can be done is that someone else has already done it. Tracy's point is, ordinary people do amazing things through the discipline of lifelong learning, because almost any skill can be learned.
Okay, lifelong learning is crucial, but how do we actually do it? With discipline. Life's busy. Tracy gives 3 really simple but powerful disciplines in reality. No excuses for making continuous learning a reality, making yourself one of the best in your field. First, discipline yourself to read for 60 minutes in your field every single day. That means consciously choosing to read books, articles, trade publications relevant to your work or goals, instead of, say, watching TV or scrolling online. He points out 60 minutes a day adds up. It's roughly a book a week, maybe 50 books a year. Since the average adult reads maybe 1 nonfiction book a year, doing this makes you incredibly knowledgeable. He claims it can make you a national authority in your field in just 3 to 5 years.
50 books versus 1. That's a staggering difference. What's the second discipline? Second, turn your car into what he calls a university on wheels. Listen to educational audio programs, podcasts like this one, audio books, courses related to your field or personal growth whenever you're driving. He figures the average person in business spends 500 to 1,000 hours a year driving. That's like 1 or 2 full university semesters worth of learning time, just sitting there waiting to be used. He tells stories of people going from rags to riches just by consistently using their drive time for disciplined learning.
Reclaiming that commute time makes sense. And the third discipline, attend courses and seminars regularly.
Could be industry conferences, workshops, online courses, webinars, whatever helps you upgrade your skills and get new insights from experts. Tracy calls this whole approach reading, listening, attending, compound learning. Like compound interest, the more you learn, the better your brain works, the smarter you get, the more connections you make. The key is the discipline to never stop learning and growing. And this ties into what Tracy calls the second most important success principle, right after self-discipline itself. He got this from Kopmeier too. You must learn from the experts. Don't waste time trying to figure everything out yourself. Learn from people who've already succeeded at what you want to do.
And he tells that story about Bob the salesman that really drives this home.
It's a perfect illustration and no excuses. Bob was struggling, working hard, but getting nowhere. So he made a disciplined decision. He started going up to the top salespeople in his office and just asking them, humbly, what books do you read? What audio do you listen to? What seminars? What specific strategies make you successful? But here's the crucial part, the disciplined part. Bob actually did what they told him. He didn't just collect the advice.
He applied it. That's the discipline gap most people fall into.
Exactly. He read the books, listened to the audios, started using the techniques they shared. He modeled himself after them. And guess what? His results took off. More appointments, better prospects, more sales. Tracy says within 6 months, Bob was one of the top producers in his office. A few years later, one of the top as a whole country. His income soared. And the kicker. Bob told Tracy that most of the top guys said he was the first person who ever just came up and asked them how they did it and asked for advice. The answers are out there, Tracy says, but it takes discipline to ask and even more discipline to actually follow through.
That story really highlights it. The knowledge is there, but the discipline is rare. And it connects perfectly to that other story Tracy tells about the compounding power of investing in yourself, the salesman, and the 3% rule.
Yes. This one is incredibly motivating, I think. No excuses. Tracy met a young salesman earning about $20,000 a year. Modest income. This salesman heard Tracy talk about his 3% rule, investing 3% of your income back into your own development each year. So the young guy decided, okay, I'll do it. Discipline. 3% of $20K is $600. He spent it on a few books, some audio programs, 1 local seminar. That same year, applying what he learned, his income jumped 50% to $30,000.
Wow. A 50% return on a $600 investment in disciplined action. That's amazing leverage.
Isn't it? So the next year, he's excited. He takes 3% of his new $30,000 income, that's $900, and reinvests it. More books, more audio, maybe another seminar. That year, his income hits $50,000. Now it's interesting. If 3% does this, what about more? So the next year, he disciplines himself to invest 5% of his $50K income, $2,500 back into himself. Better seminars, maybe travels for one, more resources, maybe coaching. That year, his income doubled to $100,000.
Doubled. Okay, now he's really onto something.
You bet. Tracy says the salesman told him after hitting a $100 K by investing 5%, he decided to go all in. He raised his disciplined investment to 10% of his income every year without fail. He kept doing it: coaches, masterminds, conferences, top resources. And he told Tracy his income had since blown past $1 million a year and was still climbing. He directly credited that massive success to the discipline of consistently investing in himself and learning from experts. It just shows, doesn't it? Disciplined, consistent investment in your own learning isn't just about small improvements. It compounds. It can lead to absolutely extraordinary results over time. You have to keep exercising that earning ability muscle, keep upgrading it. Stop the discipline and you start sliding back. But Tracy argues self-discipline goes even deeper than career or money. It's actually the key, he believes, to changing your character, becoming a fundamentally better person. He uses this really vivid analogy, the one about chemicals. Yeah. He says, imagine your personality is like soft, fluid chemicals in a dish. Easily swayed, no real structure. But when you apply the heat and pressure of self-discipline, when you consistently make yourself do the hard things, the right things, the things aligned with your values, instead of just what's easy, your personality starts to crystallize. It hardens at a higher level. Like those chemicals under pressure, they form a stable structure. Tracy argues that the biggest long-term win from self-discipline is that you literally become a different, stronger person. More resolute, more determined, greater self-control. You forge your character through disciplined choices. His rule is, to become someone you have never been before, you must do something you have never done before. To build a better character, you have to exert higher discipline. Do the things average people won't do because they're hard.
So living by your values, even when it's tough, is an act of discipline that actually shapes who you are.
Absolutely. Tracy sees values as the core programming for your subconscious. Your deepest values guide your automatic responses, especially under pressure. He uses military training as an example, constantly reinforcing values like courage and discipline so they become almost instinctual. Character, he says, isn't fixed. You build it by practicing your values consistently until they become habits. He quotes the Stoic philosopher Epictetus. Circumstances do not make the man, they merely reveal him to himself. Tracy takes this to mean your reaction reveals the character you've built through past disciplined choices. And he ties this directly to your inner mirror, your self-image, how you see yourself. Your self-image largely dictates your behavior. When you act consistently with your highest values, even when it's hard, your self-image improves. You feel better about yourself. And that directly boosts your self-esteem, how much you like yourself, which Tracy says is the core of happiness. People tend to treat you based on how you unconsciously value yourself. When your self-image, based on your actions, aligns with your self-ideal, your vision of your best self, your self-esteem soars. It creates an upward spiral.
So knowing your values and having the discipline to live them is key for feeling good about yourself and being happy.
That's exactly his point. Acting in line with values feels good, strengthens you. Compromising them feels bad, lowers confidence. He goes so far as to say almost all human problems can be solved by getting clear on your highest values and disciplining yourself to live by them again.
And he gives that example of being in a situation that forces you to compromise, and the feeling when you finally discipline yourself to leave.
Yes, that's powerful. Staying in a job, a relationship, a friendship, whatever, that makes you violate your core principles. It feels awful, chips away at you. But when you finally find the strength, the discipline, to walk away, Tracy says you feel this incredible surge of freedom, energy, relief. You wonder why you didn't do it sooner. Long-term thinking is key here. When facing a tough choice, ask Tracy's magic question. What's important here? Think about your values. He even brings in Kant's idea. Act as if your action were to become a universal law, a high standard. And if you slip, the discipline is to immediately say, that's not like me, and resolve to do better next time. Don't beat yourself up. Just get back on track.
Okay, let's move into maybe the trickiest area, personal relationships. Tracy covers marriage, kids, friendships in now. No excuses. Through the lens of discipline, too.
He does. He starts by noting something interesting. Maybe 85% of our happiness comes from good relationships. But also, maybe 85% of our problems come from relationship difficulties. His main point. Good relationships aren't luck, they're a skill. And like any skill, they require self-discipline to learn and practice.
Starting with marriage, she seems pretty direct about the discipline needed.
Very direct. Tracy says a happy, lasting marriage requires tremendous self-discipline and self-control from both people. Real love, the kind that lasts, he argues, involves self-denial, sacrifice, making your partner's happiness more important than your own immediate wants. He even quotes the Apostle Paul on love, patient, kind, not selfish, not easily angered, pointing out that each of those requires huge discipline. He also mentions the natural differences between men and women, communication styles, etc., require discipline for tolerance, understanding, patience. Building a strong relationship takes work because we're different.
And he gives specific disciplines for communication, especially for guys, admitting it's often a weak spot. Yeah, he lays out 4 simple disciplines for better listening, aimed particularly at men interacting with women, acknowledging men often get labeled poor listeners. 1. Listen attentively without interrupting. Act like you're hearing a vital secret, just once. Full focus. 2. Put distractions away. Turn off the TV, put down the phone, close the paper, give undivided attention. 3. Face the person. Lean in slightly, concentrate only on them. Show you're engaged. 4. Understand why this matters. Paying full attention tells the other person they're valuable, important. It meets a deep need, especially, he notes, referencing his needs, her needs, the need for affection often shown through attention. That seems like a small discipline with a potentially massive relationship payoff. What about faithfulness? That requires discipline, surely.
Absolutely. Tracy tackles it head on in No Excuses. Maintaining fidelity, especially in today's world, takes serious self-discipline and self-control. He offers 2 main disciplines. First, make the decision in advance. Decide unequivocally, I will never be unfaithful. Draw that line when you're thinking clearly, not in a tempting moment. Second, discipline yourself to stay out of situations where temptation is high. Avoid being alone for meals or drinks with someone of the opposite sex unless it's strictly necessary for business and very professional. He adds a visualization trick. Always imagine your spouse is there with you, watching. The overall discipline is consciously protecting your reputation for honesty and faithfulness. He also mentions the discipline needed to adapt as a marriage changes, especially when kids arrive, forcing new priorities.
Which leads to children. He says parenting requires an even higher level of discipline.
He's very strong on this. Becoming a parent demands high self-discipline. It's a 20-year commitment, minimum, with multi-generational impact. Tracy believes a child's greatest need is unconditional love and acceptance. And he says children spell love, T-I-M-E. So a core parental discipline is managing your time to ensure you spend plentiful, focused time with your kids. This often means disciplining yourself to cut back on other things, work, hobbies, social life, to be present. He tells the story of a friend, a golf fanatic, who cut his golf from 5 times a week to once a week after having kids, redirecting that time to family. Made a huge positive difference. Raising kids forces long-term thinking, he says. Your actions today shape their future. You need more self-control as a parent than when single. Can't just let it all hang out. Kids are sponges, highly sensitive to parents' behavior. Dysfunctional adults often had dysfunctional parenting. The greatest gift: let kids know they're loved 100% unconditionally, no matter their mistakes. They aren't little adults. Respond to mistakes calmly, compassionately, focused on the lesson, not just punishment or breaking their will. Parenting is about development, requiring disciplined consistency.
And finally, Tracy touches on friendship as a learnable skill, also needing discipline, and then ties it all into peace of mind.
He does. He sees being good with people, building friendships, as skills improved through disciplined behaviors. He revisits self-esteem, saying it's sensitive to how others see us. Our self-image has 3 parts: how we see ourselves, how we think others see us, how they actually see us. Happiness comes when they align. He offers the law of indirect effort. To be liked, get out of your own head and focus on the other person. This leads to his 3 C's. Practice courtesy, concern, and consideration. Basic respect, courtesy, makes people feel valued. Genuine interest, concern, builds trust. Thoughtful actions, consideration, make people feel important. His rule for great relationships: discipline yourself so people feel better after being with you than before. Making others feel important boosts your own sense of importance. And connecting all this, Tracy ends No Excuses, talking about the discipline for inner peace, a major barrier: attachment to ideas, opinions, being right, things, outcomes.
So the discipline is letting go, detachment.
Yes, the discipline of detachment. Emotionally unplugging from things or outcomes so they don't trigger negative feelings, especially the need to be right. He quotes Dr. Jampolsky. Do you want to be right or do you want to be happy? Discipline yourself to let go of winning arguments, especially on things like politics or religion. Focus on common ground preserves peace. And critically, refuse to blame anyone for anything. Blame destroys peace. It requires taking things personally and finding fault.
So if blame kills peace, responsibility builds it. And forgiveness fits in here too.
Forgiveness is the absolute key, Tracy argues. The discipline of forgiveness unlocks inner peace, emotional freedom, and it's selfish in a good way. You forgive others so you can be free from anger, resentment, baggage. It doesn't mean you approve of what they did. Use your mind, he says. Discipline yourself to find reasons to forgive and let go instead of endlessly replaying hurts. Use your willpower to choose peace over resentment. The payoff. Instantaneous, he claims. The moment you accept responsibility and forgive, the negativity vanishes, replaced by peace, lightness, joy. Consistently practicing detachment and forgiveness, that discipline wonderfully improves your whole life quality. Hashtag outro.
Wow. Okay, that was a really thorough deep dive into Brian Tracy's No Excuses. We've covered, well, a ton of ground here. Everything from his core idea of self-discipline as the master key to overcoming excuses and fear with action, the power of goals with that 10-goal exercise, accepting 100% responsibility, the discipline in work for priorities and sales, discipline saving for finance, the crucial discipline of continuous learning. How discipline builds character, strengthens relationships through listening and time, and finally finding peace through detachment and forgiveness. All straight from Brian Tracy's perspective in the book.
It really is presented by him as a complete system, with self-discipline woven through every single aspect of a successful life, based entirely on his framework and no excuses.
Definitely. And the underlying message, as we've heard, isn't really about restriction. It's about building the inner strength that actually gives you the freedom to achieve what you want, to live fully, to become the best you can be.
So maybe a final thought to leave you with. Building on Tracy's ideas from the book, he says over and over that everything worthwhile has a price, usually paid in disciplined effort or delayed gratification, and you have to pay it in advance for success. So thinking about everything we discussed, career, money, health, relationships, peace of mind, what's maybe one small specific discipline you could commit to starting today, paying that price up front. One thing you believe would have the biggest long-term positive impact on your version of success and happiness. It really brings up that question Brian Tracy implicitly asks throughout the book. Are you truly willing to pay the price now for the future you really desire?
Definitely something to think about. Thanks so much for joining us for this detailed exploration of Brian Tracy's No Excuses. We hope digging into these ideas and stories gave you some valuable takeaways, maybe sparked some thoughts on where a little more self-discipline could make a real difference for you.
Thanks for listening.
Until next time on The Deep Dive.